Brother sabotaged my college dreams to be the successful child. Years later, I'm a CEO and he's jobless, begging me for work. Do I give him a chance? I, 34F, never thought I'd be in this position. Growing up, my older brother Jake, 37M, was always the golden child. He was smart, charismatic, and seemed destined for greatness. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, bookish type who preferred the company of my computer to people. Our parents doted on Jake, certain he'd be the one to bring honor to the family name. Despite our differences, Jake and I were close as kids. He'd often help me with my homework or defend me from bullies at school. I remember one time in particular when I was 9 and he was 12. Some older kids were picking on me at the park, and Jake came running over, puffing out his chest like a superhero. He stood up to those kids, who were even bigger than him, and made them leave me alone. I thought he was the bravest person in the world that day. But things changed when we hit our teens. Jake became more competitive, always trying to one-up me in everything. At first, I thought it was just sibling rivalry, but looking back, I realize it was the beginning of something much darker. It started small. If I got an A on a test, he'd make sure to mention that he got an A+ in that subject when he took it. If I won a coding competition at school, he'd remind everyone about the state-level debate championship he'd won the year before. Our parents, perhaps unwittingly, fueled this competition. They'd praise Jake's achievements effusively, while mine were often met with a simple "good job, honey" before they turned their attention back to Jake. Despite this, I threw myself into my studies and my passion for technology. I joined every computer club I could find, spent weekends at hackathons, and taught myself multiple programming languages. By the time I was 17, I had developed a few simple apps and even sold one to a local business. I was proud of my achievements, even if they didn't seem to impress my family as much as Jake's debate trophies and student council presidency. When I was 17, I applied to several top-tier colleges, including my dream school, MIT. I had worked my ass off, maintaining a perfect GPA, participating in coding competitions, and even developing those apps in my spare time. My teachers were confident I'd get in, and for once, I felt like I might step out of Jake's shadow. The day the acceptance letters were supposed to arrive, I rushed home from school, heart pounding with anticipation. But when I got there, my mom was in tears, and my dad looked disappointed. They handed me a letter from MIT - a rejection. I was devastated. How could this happen? My credentials were perfect. Jake, who was home from college for the weekend, tried to console me. "Don't worry, sis. There are plenty of other schools out there. Maybe you just weren't cut out for MIT. His words stung, but I nodded, fighting back tears. That night, I cried myself to sleep, feeling like a failure. The next morning, I woke up determined to figure out what went wrong. I called MIT's admissions office, but they couldn't give me any specific information about why I was rejected. I went over my application materials countless times, wondering if I had made some crucial mistake. I ended up going to a state school, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't MIT. The sting of that rejection lingered, making me doubt myself at every turn. Was I really as good as I thought I was? Maybe Jake and my parents were right, maybe I just wasn't cut out for the big leagues. Jake, meanwhile, graduated from an Ivy League university with honors and landed a prestigious job at a Fortune 500 company. Our parents couldn't have been prouder. At family gatherings, all anyone wanted to talk about was Jake's latest promotion or the important clients he was working with. I sat in the corner, nursing my drink and trying not to feel invisible. But I refused to give up on my dreams. I threw myself into my studies at the state school, determined to prove that I could succeed regardless of where I got my degree. I took extra classes, did internships during every break, and continued working on my own projects on the side. After graduation, I landed a job at a mid-sized tech company. The work was challenging, and I loved it. I quickly gained a reputation as someone who could solve complex problems and come up with innovative solutions. Within 3 years, I had been promoted twice. Meanwhile, Jake's career seemed to stall. He'd call me occasionally, complaining about office politics or how his bosses didn't appreciate his talents. He always had an excuse: bad economy, jealous coworkers, you name it. Our parents continued to support him, emotionally and financially, certain that he'd bounce back. "He's just going through a rough patch," they'd say. He'll be back on top in no time. Years passed. I worked hard, climbing the corporate ladder in the tech industry. I was doing well, but there was always a part of me that wondered what could have been if I'd gone to MIT. Would I have achieved even more? Would my parents finally see me as equal to Jake? Then, about 5 years ago, something incredible happened. A startup idea I had been working on in my spare time suddenly took off. It was a platform that used AI to optimize supply chain logistics, not the sexiest concept, but one with huge potential in the business world. I pitched the idea to a few venture capital firms, and to my shock, they loved it. We got major funding, and within 2 years, we were one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. I became a CEO before I turned 30, and suddenly, I was the one making headlines. The day my company was featured in Forbes, my phone exploded with congratulatory messages. Friends, former colleagues, even old teachers reached out to tell me how proud they were. But the call I was waiting for, the one from my family, didn't come until late that night. My mom called, her voice a mix of confusion and pride. "Honey, we had no idea you were doing so well," she said. "Why didn't you tell us about your company?" The truth was, I had told them multiple times. But they had always been so focused on Jake's career that mine seemed to fade into the background. I swallowed my frustration and thanked her for calling. Jake, however, became distant. He'd skip family gatherings or leave early when he did show up. When we did talk, he changed the subject whenever my work came up. I tried to reach out, to include him in my success, but he always had an excuse for why he couldn't meet up or why he had to cut our calls short. Last month, everything changed. I received a letter from MIT, apologizing for a clerical error that had occurred 17 years ago. Apparently, my application had been mixed up with another student's, leading to my rejection. They had only recently discovered the mistake during a system audit. I was floored. All these years, I had thought I wasn't good enough. But then a chilling thought struck me: what if it wasn't a mistake? I remembered how Jake had been home that weekend, how he had access to the mail before I did. The more I thought about it, the more things started to make sense. Jake's overly sympathetic consolation when I got the rejection letter. The way he had discouraged me from appealing the decision or applying to transfer later. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. I confronted my parents, and after some prodding, they admitted the truth. Jake had intercepted my acceptance letter and replaced it with a fake rejection. He had been afraid that if I went to MIT, I'd overshadow him. Our parents had found out a few years later but decided to keep it a secret to protect the family. I was furious. All those years of self-doubt, of feeling like I wasn't good enough, all because of Jake's insecurity and my parents' misguided attempt to keep the peace. I cut off contact with my family, needing time to process this betrayal. For weeks, I oscillated between rage and despair. I threw myself into work, staying at the office until the early hours of the morning, trying to outrun my emotions. My husband was worried, my friends were concerned, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. How could I explain that my entire adult life had been shaped by a lie? Then, a week ago, Jake showed up at my office unannounced. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. My assistant tried to turn him away, but I told her to let him in. As soon as the door closed behind him, Jake broke down. "I'm so sorry," he sobbed, collapsing into a chair. "I know I can never make up for what I did, but I need you to know how sorry I am." As I watched my once golden brother cry, I felt a confusing mix of emotions: anger, pity, and a deep, lingering sadness for the relationship we could have had. Between sobs, Jake told me his story. He'd been fired from his job 6 months ago for ethical violations. He'd fudged some numbers on a big account, trying to make himself look good. He'd been living off savings, but that was running out. His wife had left him, taking their kids, after she found out about his firing and the extent of his lies. He was facing eviction from his apartment. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, wiping his eyes, "but I need help. I've applied to hundreds of jobs, but no one will hire me. You're my last hope, sis. Can you give me a chance? Any job in your company, I'll start at the bottom if I have to." I sat there, staring at my once golden brother, now a broken man begging for scraps. Part of me wanted to throw him out, to let him suffer the consequences of his actions. But another part remembered the brother who used to protect me, who helped me with my homework. The brother who stood up to bullies for me in the park all those years ago. "Why should I help you, Jake?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "You stole my future. You let me believe I wasn't good enough for years. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Jake nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I've thought about it every day since it happened. I was so scared of being overshadowed that I became the worst version of myself. I don't expect you to forgive me. I need help. Please." So here I am, Reddit. Do I give Jake a chance? Does he deserve one after what he did? Or am I setting myself up for more betrayal? My company is my baby, and I've worked hard to create a positive culture. Bringing in Jake could disrupt that. But if I turn him away, I'm not sure what will happen to him. What would you do in my shoes? Edit 1. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your thoughtful responses. I've read every single comment, and I'm overwhelmed by the support and advice I've received. I want to address a few common points and provide some additional context. 1. Why didn't I confront Jake immediately? Honestly, I was in shock. When he showed up at my office, he was so broken that my initial anger was overshadowed by concern. I told him I needed time to think, and that's when I decided to post here for advice. 2. Legal ramifications. Many of you have pointed out that what Jake did could be considered mail fraud. I've consulted with a lawyer friend, and while there could be a case, the statute of limitations has likely passed. Plus, I'm not sure I want to go down that road. The idea of dragging my family through a legal battle, no matter how justified, feels exhausting. 3. My parents. Yes, I'm angry with them too for keeping this secret. I've had limited contact with them since finding out, and that's a whole other issue I need to address. Their betrayal, in some ways, feels even deeper than Jake's. They were supposed to protect both of us, not play favorites and cover up wrongdoings. 4. Jake's family. Some asked about Jake's wife and kids. From what I understand, they're staying with her parents. The separation is recent, and I don't know all the details. Jake mentioned that his oldest, a 10-year-old boy, refuses to speak to him. That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. 5. My company. To clarify, we're a mid-sized tech company with about 500 employees. We're not a small startup anymore, but we're not a giant corporation either. We've managed to maintain a close-knit culture despite our growth, which is why I'm hesitant to bring in any element that might disrupt that. 6. My personal life. A few people asked. Yes, I'm married, no kids yet, and my husband is supportive but cautious about the whole situation. He's worried about the emotional toll this is taking on me and is concerned that helping Jake might open old wounds rather than heal them. 7. Mental health. Several comments mentioned the possibility of Jake having narcissistic tendencies or other mental health issues. While I'm not qualified to diagnose anyone, I agree that professional help would be beneficial for him, and honestly, probably for me too. After reading your comments and sleeping on it, I've come to a decision. I'm going to give Jake a chance, but with very strict conditions. He'll start with a 3-month probationary contract in our customer service department. This is entry-level and far removed from any sensitive company information. He'll need to attend therapy sessions and join a support group for people rebuilding their lives after career setbacks. I'll pay for the therapy, but he needs to commit to it. He'll have to find his own place to live. I won't be housing him. However, I'll help him find an affordable short-term rental to get him started. We'll have weekly check-ins where we talk about his progress, both at work and personally. These won't be at the office, but at a neutral location like a coffee shop. He'll need to write a detailed letter of apology, not just to me, but to our parents as well, taking full responsibility for his actions without making excuses. Any hint of unethical behavior or attempting to leverage our relationship for personal gain will result in immediate termination. He'll need to agree to a public acknowledgement of his past mistakes if asked. I won't go out of my way to expose him, but I also won't lie if the situation ever comes up. I've decided to frame this as a redemption opportunity, not just for Jake, but for our relationship as siblings. It won't be easy, and I'm still hurt and angry, but I want to at least try. Maybe this is naive of me, but I can't help but hope that the brother I once knew is still in there somewhere. I know some of you will think I'm being too soft, while others might think these conditions are too harsh. But this feels like the right balance for me, a chance for redemption without compromising my own boundaries or my company's integrity. I'll be talking to Jake tomorrow to lay out these terms. If he accepts, we'll move forward. If not, then at least I'll know I tried. Either way, I think I'll be able to sleep better knowing I didn't turn my back on him when he was at his lowest, even if he didn't extend me the same courtesy all those years ago. Thank you all again for your advice and support. It's been cathartic to share this story and hear your perspectives. I'll update again after I speak with Jake. Edit 2. I spoke with Jake yesterday. Here's what happened. I met Jake at a quiet cafe near my office. He was already there when I arrived, nervously fidgeting with a coffee cup. He looked marginally better than he had at our last meeting. He'd shaved and his clothes were pressed, but the dark circles under his eyes remained. I laid out my terms, explaining each point carefully. Jake listened quietly, nodding along. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he started to cry. "I don't deserve this," he said. "After what I did to you, I don't deserve any kindness." We ended up talking for hours. Jake opened up about his struggles with anxiety and imposter syndrome, how he'd always felt pressure to be perfect, and how seeing my success had made him realize how empty his own achievements felt. He told me about the moment he intercepted my MIT acceptance letter. "I saw it in the mail and just panicked," he said. "I thought if you went to MIT, you'd eclipse me completely. I was supposed to be the successful one, you know? It was stupid and selfish, and I've regretted it every day since." Jake accepted my terms without hesitation, saying he'd do anything for a chance to make things right. We also agreed to attend family therapy together to work through our issues and the years of resentment. As we were about to leave, Jake hesitated, then pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Jake handed me the paper. "It's my MIT acceptance letter," he said. "I've kept it all these years as a reminder of my biggest mistake. I think it's time you had it." I took the letter, emotions swirling. We parted ways, both of us teary-eyed but cautiously hopeful. Jake started his probationary period this week. It's too early to say how it'll go, but he seems genuinely committed to changing. He's already attended his first therapy session and support group meeting. I know we have a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, I feel hopeful about our relationship. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me find a way forward. I'll post another update in a few months to let you know how things are going. Wish us luck. Final update, 6 months later. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, and a lot has happened. I promised an update, so here goes. The past 6 months have been a roller coaster, but I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. Jake completed his 3-month probation in customer service with flying colors. We extended his contract for another 6 months, this time in our marketing department. The therapy sessions have been intense but productive. We've uncovered a lot of deep-seated issues, not just between Jake and me, but also involving our parents and their expectations. Our parents have also been part of some of these sessions. They've apologized for their role in enabling Jake's behavior and for keeping the truth from me for so long. On a personal level, Jake has been making strides. He's found an apartment of his own and has been attending support group meetings regularly. He's also been taking online courses to improve his skills. The biggest surprise came last month. Jake's ex-wife reached out to him after hearing about the positive changes he's been making. They're not getting back together, but they're in a better place now. Jake gets to see his kids every other weekend. As for our sibling relationship, it's complicated. There are good days and bad days, but we're talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Jake asked me recently why I decided to give him a chance. I told him about this Reddit post and how the advice I received helped me make my decision. He was quiet for a long time before saying, "I don't think I would have had the strength to do what you did if our positions were reversed. Thank you for being the better person." Is everything perfect? No. There are still trust issues to work through, and I sometimes catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I'm proud of the progress we've made. Thank you, Reddit, for being there during one of the most challenging periods of my life. Your support and advice made a real difference. Signing off for now, but who knows? Maybe I'll be back with another update someday. Until then, take care of yourselves and cherish your relationships. You never know when you might get a chance to heal old wounds.